Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a scalpel to one of the most stressful intersections in professional medicine. That moment when your duty to a single patient directly conflicts with your duty to the wider public.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk.
We're looking specifically at the official guidance from the GMC on managing a patient's fitness to drive.
And these sources, they're dense, but they're also crystal clear. What you have here are the UK professional standards, updated recently, and they outline this, mandated process for high-stakes decisions.
Exactly. And if you're preparing for something like the MSRA SJT,
Then this framework, this exact sequence of actions, is precisely what the examiners are testing.
so our mission today is to turn these guidelines into, well, actionable knowledge. We need to internalize the GMC's step-by-step procedure.
So that when you face that terrifying scenario, you're relying on the rule book, not just adrenaline.
The decision to breach confidentiality to stop an unfit driver.
Let's jump straight into it. Let's use a pressure cooker scenario, the kind you always see. Imagine you have a patient, let's say, with a new diagnosis of poorly controlled epilepsy. It means he is absolutely unfit to drive.
Right.
You inform him, you explain the risks, and you tell him he must stop driving and immediately notify the DVLA.
And he says no.
He refuses point blank, says he needs his car for his job, for his life, and then he says, if you call anyone, if you betray my trust, I will walk out that door and never see another doctor again.
And that is the ultimate ethical tension, isn't it? So
Yeah.
how does the official guidance weigh those two massive colliding duties?
Well, the core truth here is often a bit counterintuitive for doctors.
Go on.
Confidentiality is the absolute foundation of trust, but, and this is the big but, the duty to protect the public from death or serious harm overrides that when there's a significant and immediate risk.
That sounds like something a lawyer would write. I mean, practically speaking, if you disclose, you've just destroyed that patient's trust forever.
You have.
So how does the guidance justify prioritizing a theoretical public risk over the very real cost of losing that patient from the health system entirely?
And that's exactly why this is so critical. The GMC understands that. They know the cost. It's why disclosure is framed as a very, very precise last resort.
So it's not a simple choice.
Not at all. This decision isn't just about avoiding a lawsuit. It's a core requirement of good medical practice. You have to master the sequence because getting it wrong has potentially fatal consequences.
For the public and for your career.
Exactly. And the exam consistently tests that tipping point. When do you move from persuasion into, well, required escalation?
Okay, so let's break down the mechanics. When the patient refuses, where does the legal burden actually lie?
That's a crucial distinction. The sources define 3 key roles. First, the patient's role. It's a legal one.
Meaning?
The patient holds the primary legal responsibility for telling the DVLA about any condition that affects their driving. Your job is to remind them of that duty.
So the doctor isn't the police and the doctor isn't the judge.
Precisely. You are, in a sense, the informant of medical fact. The ultimate decision on fitness to drive belongs to the DVLA. They are the regulatory body.
We just provide the medical facts.
Our role is twofold. Inform the patient of the condition's impact and, only when absolutely necessary, provide the minimal medical facts to the regulatory body.
And that brings us to a key constraint, doesn't it? The GMC talks about minimum intrusion. What does that actually mean when you're picking up the phone to the DVLA?
It means you cannot just send them the patient's entire file. You don't list every minor issue.
Right.
You only disclose the absolute minimum information required to protect the public.
Which would be?
Usually just the diagnosis that impairs their driving and the fact the patient is, not complying with advice. You have to protect their privacy as much as possible, even while breaching it.
So the safest doctor always tries to get consent first.
Always. Disclosure without consent is only for those exceptional cases, where failure to disclose might expose others to a risk of death or serious harm.
Okay, this brings us to the mandatory framework. The actions that will score highest in an SJT because they follow that mandated sequence.
Yes, there's a clear stepwise path. First,
Assess and inform.
exactly, assess and inform. If you're unsure if the condition impairs driving, you have to consult the DVLA's own guidance, assessing fitness to drive.
Or ask a senior.
Or ask a senior, absolutely. You then explain everything to the patient, tell them their legal duty to report, and this is critical, you inform them that you may be obliged to disclose if they continue to drive when unfit.
And you document every single word.
Meticulously.
In the medical record.
Okay, so documentation is key. But what happens when the patient resists? They won't listen.
Then your next step is to persuade. You have to make every reasonable effort, urge them to stop, offer a second opinion if they dispute the diagnosis.
What about talking to family?
You can, but only if the patient agrees. You can't just call their spouse. That's another breach.
Right. So you persuade, you reason, but it fails. And you're certain they're still driving. That's the escalation point. That is the last resort. Disclose. If persuasion fails, and you believe their continued driving poses a significant risk of death or serious harm, you must promptly contact the DVLA medical advisor.
Now, here's the bit that I think catches a lot of people out. The warning. Why does the GMC want us to try to tell the patient before we contact the DVLA?
It feels risky, I know.
It feels like you're just guaranteeing they'll disappear.
It does, but it's an attempt to maintain ethical integrity. The guidance says you should try to inform the patient in writing of your intention to disclose before you do it.
And if you go ahead anyway?
You must still notify them in writing after the disclosure and record that you've done so. It fulfills the duty to be open with your patient, even when you're overriding their autonomy.
Okay. Assess, persuade, warn, disclose. That path is much clearer. What if the patient can't understand any of this? Say, due to advanced dementia.
That's the special scenario for incapacity. If a patient is incapable of understanding the advice, you bypass the whole persuasion stage.
And you just...
You inform the DVLA as soon as is practicable. You don't wait for consent because dialogue isn't possible and the risk is immediate.
To really lock this framework down, let's use that mnemonic, CANDOUR.
All right.
It's a good internal checklist before you take that final step.
I like it. Let's go through it.
Okay, see.
Condition. The impact of the condition has been clearly explained, alerted. You've alerted the patient to your intent to disclose, non-compliance. You've confirmed they are still driving. You have a strong reason to believe it. Documentation is complete and thorough. Objection considered. You've actually listened to their reasons for refusing. Urgency. Is there a serious and immediate risk of harm here?
And finally,
report to the DVLA. The absolute final step.
That's a really solid checklist.
And if you need a visual cue for that urgency part, picture a set of scales in your head.
Okay.
On one side, you have this heavy metal steering wheel. That's public safety, the risk of death. On the other, a single fragile piece of paper, patient confidentiality. Only when that steering wheel side slams all the way down, when the public risk is overwhelming and urgent, only then is disclosure justified. The benefit must outweigh the harm to trust.
That's a powerful image. Okay, let's look at the patterns the MSRA uses to test this. They love testing the exceptions.
They do.
So pattern 1, the patient is incapable.
What's being tested there is your knowledge of the exception to consent. The best action is immediate confidential disclosure to the DVLA. No persuasion needed.
Pattern 2, the ambiguous condition. You suspect there's an issue, but, it's outside your expertise.
What's tested is professional humility, safety. The best action is to contact an experienced colleague or the DVLA medical advisor for clarification before you advise the patient. Don't guess.
Right. And pattern 3, this is the tricky one. The patient refuses disclosure, but promises they will stop driving.
Yeah, what's tested here is your ability to prioritize trust when the risk is mitigated.
So the best action is?
Document their promise. Schedule a rapid review. You do not disclose yet because they've agreed to stop. Disclosure is only justified if you get evidence they're lying.
Okay. And pattern 4, the patient isn't a driver, they're a pilot or a train driver.
What's tested is knowing the correct regulatory channel. You apply the exact same principles, but you contact the right authority. The Civil Aviation Authority for a pilot, for example, not the DVLA.
Okay, understanding those patterns is key. But what about the trap answers, the things that lose you marks?
Trap number 1 is delaying action. The guidance uses the word promptly. If there's a risk of serious harm, you act now. You don't schedule a review for 3 weeks' time.
Right. Trap 2.
Immediately disclosing to relatives. Family are not the authority. You're just breaching confidentiality to another person, unless the patient has consented or lacks capacity.
Trap 3. Telling the police immediately.
Yeah, this is almost always wrong. The correct channel is the DVLA's medical advisor. It's confidential and professional. Calling the police is a much bigger and often inappropriate step.
And the final trap.
Disclosing too much information. You violate that principle of minimum intrusion if you tell the DVLA about the patient's smoking habit or their depression. Stick only to the facts about their fitness to drive.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this into 3 simple, high-yield takeaways.
Good idea.
Okay, 1. The initial steps are everything. Robust patient discussion, clear advice on their legal duty, and comprehensive immediate documentation of that conversation.
If it's not written down, it didn't happen. And number 2, always prioritize the process of persuasion. Offer a second opinion, involve carers with consent. Escalation comes after that fails.
And finally, 3, disclosure without consent is justified legally and ethically, but it is a last resort. It's only for when the risk of death or serious harm from them driving unequivocally outweighs the patient's right to privacy.
Exactly. And remember, good practice means you have to protect your patients, yes, but also the wider community they're a part of. Mastering this difficult balance, knowing exactly when to make that call, that's the hallmark of a safe doctor.
That concludes this deep dive. We really encourage you to review those specific GMC paragraphs we've mentioned and use that CA and DOUR framework to test yourself on the next scenario you read.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your sources with us. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.